two things I'm going to state. The Supreme Court decision on Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission was one of the worst decisions that could have possibly been made. And two, it was the correct decision. I wish the Supreme Court had made the wrong decision. Here's some liberal hysterics on Citizens United who would never admit that the Constitution needs to be fully scrapped in favor of something that would actually allow for freedom of expression. Instead, they're going to pretend the Supreme Court fucked up and that the Constitution really does prioritize freedom of expression for every person. It doesn't.
The U.S. Supreme Court today overturned laws on the books for nearly a century and ruled that corporations can spend freely now on political campaigns. Those who like this decision say it's a victory for free speech. Those who don't say campaigns will now be drowning in corporate cash and influence.
Maybe you don't even want to touch this, but what is, as a person, do you worry at all? I know you don't. No, as a person, you worry at all that there's too much money in politics?
No, I really don't.
The Citizens United outside spending exploded to just over $1.2 billion in the last election. And look at this. Last year, the top 100 donors to super PACs spent almost as much as all 4.7 million small donors combined. 100 people spending as much as millions.
Is it just inevitable that we're now in a period where money is going to be playing this dominant role in American politics?
I'm afraid, at least for the time being, that's going to be the case.
In short, there are now no checks on the ability of corporations or unions or other giant aggregations of power to decide our elections. None.
Scalia, as a capitalist, is completely right not to worry about the presence of money in politics, in so much as he's also completely correct from the point of view of a capitalist not to worry about the presence of money and capital in every aspect of everyday life. Let's read the text of the First Amendment, shall we? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I got bad news for the liberals who think the Supreme Court made an incorrect decision based on the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't say that the right of free expression is guaranteed to all citizens. It doesn't say that all citizens must have access to any media platform available to anyone else with the capital to buy that platform. It doesn't even say that the right of the people to freely express themselves shall be invaluable and strived to be upheld. It only says that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Whose freedom of speech? The freedom of speech of the people who already have freedom of speech. The freedom of speech of people who are already rich enough to have the capital to spread their speech. It does not say that freedom of speech applies equally to everybody. It only says that whatever speech anyone does have, the government cannot prosecute somebody for using that speech. It assures no one of equal rights. One of the biggest champions of trying to get the Supreme Court decision on Citizens United to be reversed is the online news network, The Young Turks. The Young Turks, along with their pack that Cenk Uygur found called Wolfpack, and their basic premise is that the Supreme Court fucked up and the decision needs to be reversed to uphold the Constitution to its rightful potential. After consideration, and I've worked with Wolfpack, it's a good organization, I think it's doing the right thing under the circumstances. But their basic premise is that the Supreme Court made the wrong decision, not that the Constitution allowed them to make that decision. Let me explain further. The Young Turks recently sold some equity to a venture capitalist for upwards of $20 million. And Cenk derided anyone who would call it their hypocrisy for allowing money to influence their speech. And he was rather flippant about that. Take a look.
So now we have wonderful news for the company. We actually did get an investment that was announced yesterday. It's $20 million, which to us is a lot of money, and to you guys, I'm sure, is a lot of money. For a traditional media company, they're probably snickering. How could you ever get anything done with $20 million? Just $20 million. That is what they pay some of their anchors every year. So, but wait till they get a load of us. With $20 million, we've never had anywhere near that kind of money. I believe that we can do amazing things. And yes, amazing things together, as we always have for these last 15 years. So, natural question people ask is about the investors. So, what do they want to do and what are their motivations? So, do they want to change TYT? Does this mean that we take the money and that's it? We're in the Bahamas. Well, we're still on the air, so I guess not. And I don't think that's really how an investment works. Or they come in and they change things. No, guys. They put the money in because they like what we're doing.
You want to know what one of the most common rebuttals is for people who take big corporate cash for their election campaign? I receive these donations from people who already like me. They're not influencing me. They already like me. They are doing it because they wanted to give their money. They're doing it because they believe in me. So, they have the money, so they're giving it to me. I'm not corrupted. But the obvious rebuttal to that rebuttal is that if you're the type of person who is susceptible to receive $20 million from a venture capitalist firm, either as a company or as a politician and their super PAC, you are already an apologist for the capitalist class at the least, and a member of the capitalist class at the most. The Young Turks is the kind of program which would want to accept $20 million from a venture capital firm, and a venture capital firm sees in the Young Turks the kind of people to invest $20 million in and receive the surplus of some of their labor because they own some of the company. Does money affect your perspective in political discourse and in social discourse, or doesn't it? Whether it's a political campaign, or whether it's a political news show, or what, even if it's not political, if it's any media form, any form of expression, any exercise over the means of production, your perspective is affected by the capital you have, the money you accept, the things you buy, the way you run your company. Your company is a privately owned company. You privately own the means of production. You are petit bourgeois. In that sense, you are a capitalist and you have a vested interest in the continuation of capitalism. That is suspect to a leftist, and so is your acceptance of a $20 million investment from venture capitalists. Since they agree with you already, that's also suspect. You shouldn't be on the good side of a venture capitalist firm. You shouldn't want to accept $20 million from a venture capitalist firm. That's the point.
See, that's how it works. You put money into Nike if you say, hey, those are good sneakers and that's doing really well.
Nike has within their company the market share to take up a substantial portion of the shoe market and has within their advertising budget the ability to substantially influence the perspective of the public. It is not simply you like a company, you give them money.
You don't put money in to change something because that doesn't make any sense. You're probably going to lose your money, or you don't know how it's going to go if you change it.
Dang, it's not that simple. The company EW Scripts just bought the website Cracked.com and laid off some of their top writers because apparently they want a different voice. Yeah, your investors probably don't want to change much, but it's not as simple as you invest in a company because you like what they're doing. That's not what Rupert Murdoch did. That's not what Jeffrey Zucker's done. That's not what Disney has done by buying almost all entertainment. It's not that simple. You're still a small business, but who knows who else is going to want to influence you. You still, at the end of the day, want to see the continuation of capitalism. And this $20 million investment deal makes it even worse. It was already bad for you to be a privately owned company. But this is on another level.
So they put the money in because they think you guys are gigantic, which you are. So we started this with almost no money at all. And we slowly, over 15 years, built this thing. And yes, now it's ranked #1 in online news. And that is why we are besieged by the right wing, a tiny fraction of the left wing.
Hi there, I'm the tiny fraction of the left wing that you're complaining about. Or as leftists call it, the left wing. You're not a leftist, you're a liberal. Learn the difference.
And certainly the establishment. But through all that, what the investors see is, oh my God, how the hell did they get to be #1 with that little money? You know how we did? Because we apparently have a message that you guys like. And they said, that's it, that's what we want to back.
For the most part, people live in a society in which the voices that dominate the flow of information present to viewers one version of liberal democracy, liberal capitalism, or another version of liberal capitalism. They don't have it in them to hear a version of socialist democracy because there doesn't exist a way for people to practice it. The means of production are not owned by the content creators. We're simply borrowing them for as much as we can. And for the bigger audiences, for the people with bigger audiences, they're doing the best they can, even though the very existence of any platform feeds back into the control of the owner class. Even if it's on YouTube, it flows back to Google. So people see the message and they like it compared to the other forms of liberalism and outright fascism that are being presented. They like it, they prefer it, but they don't really know of any other way. And if they did, maybe people would prefer socialism if it could be practiced and people knew it was possible. Who knows?
So it would defeat the entire point if we changed, and then they would lose all their money. Not a good strategy if you're an investor. So, and now, of course, there's been a number of absurd things that were put out there immediately as soon as it was announced. My favorite is the one that was raised in a debate recently, and now both the right and the left, not left-wing, and establishment, mainly the establishment Democrats are using it. Well,
also not the point. If you own the means of production, the end game is you owning the means of production and furthering the ideology of capitalism along the way. That's the end game, and that in and of itself is the objection.
Well, if you're against money in politics, then why are you in favor of money in companies? That doesn't make any sense. We're not a political party. I'm not running in 2020. TYT is not running in 2018. There is no such thing. You can't run a company. We don't think companies are people.
Political campaigns are forms of free expression, ostensibly, and so are political news shows. It is not that much of a stretch. One uses capitalism to further the agendas of political candidates. One uses capitalism to further the agenda of media pundits. You have capital, you're using it. And you're using it on things that are directly related to politics, so it's really not that much of a stretch. Even if what you were doing had no direct political angle, you still further a mode of production and see a vested interest in having it continue simply by owning the means of production and privately controlling it and selling some equity to other people who are privately controlling it solely absent of their labor. You are at least laboring some of what you do and making less of a profit than some bigger businesses, but your venture capital investors are not laboring at all. They're just letting you do what you do and profiting off you. That's exploitation. And you are perfectly content to see capitalism continue. That is the criticism. Money in politics, money in the means of production. The profit motive in either case. Both of them are being objected to. They don't have to be exactly the same to have a consistent objection to both. The profit motive is bad. That's what people are saying.
But money in politics is a completely different issue. That's why it's a weird thing to answer. Okay, here, let me put it this way. If a company exists, are we against it? Of course not, we're a company.
You are in favor of private control of the means of production and extraction of surplus value for the furtherance of the capitalist mode of production. So are super PACs. They're just using something a little bit more publicly susceptible. But the existence of private companies are more insidious because, Jank, you are using it as if it's the natural order of things, the way things should be, not a subversion of labor. You are saying this is how labor naturally is and should be. You are right to be outraged about capitalists buying elections for return on investment. You should just as much be outraged on a return on investment being expected in all aspects of life. The profit motive is not a good thing for an egalitarian society in any sense. That's the point. It's not that weird to say one sphere of life shouldn't be controlled by the profit motive, so other spheres of life shouldn't be controlled by the profit motive either. It's not that weird.
If a company goes to buy a politician, are we opposed to that? Yes, it's not that complicated. Companies should be allowed to do certain things like run a business. They should not be allowed to do other things like invest in politicians and say, oh, no, I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, when obviously they're doing that for a profit motive. So, some people say, oh yeah, do you want to get your own money out of politics? So as TYT, you wouldn't contribute to politicians? Yes, of course.
A company is allowed to do certain things like run a business, but not allowed to do other things like buy politicians. So they're allowed to rent the labor of other people and extract the value of other people's labor for a profit, but they're not allowed to buy politicians for return on investment for a profit motive for themselves. One profit motive is okay and the other one isn't. And as the left will say, the profit motive is exploitative no matter what industry it's a part of, whether it's political campaigns or whether it's political news shows or whether it's a shoe company. It's all exploitative. That's the point. That's why it's a problem. That's why we're objecting to you. We're objecting to you because you're a privately owned company who accepted an investment from venture capitalists. The existence of venture capitalists is the problem. The existence of capital is the problem. The existence of capital's supremacy over the power of labor is a problem, and you are continuing that.
I want to get the corporate money out. I want to get the union money out. I want to get all the money out of politics so we can have clean elections. So it's a talking point thrown out there to purposely confuse you, so don't believe the hype.
Are you in favor of capitalism or not? Are you in favor of private control over the means of production or not? Are you in favor of the existence of wage labor or not? If the answer to all these questions are yes, then we're not confused, and we're going to criticize you anyway, because that's the problem.
Speaking of things meant to confuse you, oh, you guys originally got a loan from the Romers, they're Republicans, so you guys are obviously Republican shills. You guys got a loan from people who back Democrats, so you're obviously Democratic shills. So which one is it? Make up your mind. Well, you guys are way too liberal because you support Bernie Sanders, and obviously some of your investors have donated to politicians, so hence you guys are too establishment. Which one is it?
You cannot be anti-establishment and be in favor of capitalism, so therefore you're establishment. I hope that clears it up.
We're going to about double the size of the company. That means we're going to have a lot more shows. We're going to be able to spread our message out further. This is all amazing news. Now, I do want to get to one question that I think is fair. So, and some of our members have asked this. So, money in politics is an absurd example, but they...
Wait. You're going to double the size of the company and have more shows and be able to get your message out further. That harkens back to the point I made initially in this video. You are okay with some people having more rights to speech than other people. You being profitable and being allowed to spread your message out further than other people as a result of the money you have is not a violation of the Constitution. Likewise, people being allowed to spend money on independent expenditures for political campaigns should also, if going by the Constitution, not be a violation. Now, again, I wish the Supreme Court had made the wrong decision. Unfortunately, they made the right decision. But Cenk right there proved that he's okay with some people having more freedom of speech than others because of the money they have. Speech is not just relating to the government. Speech is relating to all aspects of life, media, and artistic creation. And Cenk is okay with some people having more freedom of speech than others. All of this is completely constitutional. The question is not how to fix a Supreme Court decision that was fucked up. It's how to replace a constitution which allowed for the decision to be considered in the first place.
They say, are you going to be overly influenced by the wishes of your financial backers? Okay, that's a fair question. Well, so number one, we already have the money. So, and so in explaining how that works, I don't mean to rub it in or anything like that. I'm just saying that it's not in increments, so there are no strings attached.
It doesn't need to be in increments for there to be strings attached. Someone could promise to only run one term in Congress. There's still strings attached that they're going to do what's wanted. And what's wanted for your investors is for you to continue the private ownership of the means of production, which allows them to profit. That is the string attached. That capitalism will continue. That's not considered a string for you, but that's considered a string for leftists. That's the point. That's the problem. That's the issue. Again, these aren't that much of a stretch from each other.
And like I said, they gave it to us based on our success. So that is not so to go away from what we're doing would destroy their investments. So they're perfectly aware of that. And guys, the most important thing of all is that the proof is always in the pudding.
To be slightly pedantic, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And the eating that's going to be taking place is the fact that Cenk wants to continue the capitalist mode of production and allow his investors to profit off the labor of his employees, and for him to profit off the labor of his employees, and for the investors to profit off his labor. That is a deal. Those are the terms. The terms is that capitalism continues to exist. A capitalist mode of production continues to exist. Private control of the means of production, absent direct labor, continues to exist. Those are the strings attached. That's the pudding. So basically what I'm trying to say is that as long as there is no constitutional violation of some people who have more control over the flow of capital than other people being able to spread their message further because they have more money and more of an ability to get their message out there as a result of increased economic power from other people. And as long as there's no constitutional violation on that, then consistently, Citizens United should stand. But Citizens United shouldn't stand. And the reason Citizens United shouldn't stand is because the First Amendment sucks at protecting actual people. It can only say you're not going to be prosecuted for what you say. It cannot guarantee you the rights of free expression. It can only guarantee that the rights of free expression you have, as meager as they might be, cannot be prosecuted. That's it. If private control of the media is not a violation of the First Amendment, and it's not, then I see no reason why Citizens United would be. And it isn't. But that leads us to a problem. The Supreme Court didn't fuck up when interpreting the Constitution. The Constitution is a fucked up document that allowed Citizens United to be interpreted as it was in the first place. So what follows here is a provision which could serve as an example as something that would actually protect free speech as part of any given constitution, and would be a better version of the First Amendment. Listen. further emphasize my point that free speech can't be protected for those who don't already have it, I want to leave you with this quote I found from an article titled, "Free Speech is an Illusion." The idea that even hate speech is protected under free speech relies on the assumption that speech cannot, in and of itself, be harmful. This has a direct corollary. Free speech is limited to only that which is ineffectual, that which cannot manifest itself as concrete action. This is why the state has been able to act against the speech of leftists, and whether it is arresting Emma Goldman for printing anarchist propaganda or assassinating Fred Hampton for organizing on the streets of Chicago. Their actions prove that free speech is reserved for those that do not pose a challenge to power. In other words, we as leftists can proclaim we want to overthrow capitalism all we like. But if we were to actually put those words into any sort of action, we would be declared state enemies. Therefore, free speech cannot and never has been equally applied, and that is why Citizens United was actually the correct decision for the Supreme Court to make if they were going by the Constitution itself. The only problem is the Constitution, and the First Amendment in particular, sucks and cannot protect us. For Democratize the Media, I'm Jeremy Einbinder. Thanks for watching.